Hey nerds, Farmer Jesse here. Welcome to Growers Daily, your daily dose of ecological farming insight. It is Friday, July 11th, 2025, and today we're going to talk about the perils of growing what people want, planting perennials all up in the annuals business, and it's Feedback Friday. So let's do it. All right, happy Friday, everyone. I hope everyone is doing well. I'm pretty whooped from a busy week of gardening and glad to have got the trellis up for the late field tomatoes yesterday. The goal there is just to grow some, nice slicers and canners at the driest time of the year that are low maintenance and delicious and do well through that period when the leaves aren't just staying so. And when we're not typically having record rainfall events. Also, have I told you how obsessed I am with teff? Teff is a cover crop I haven't really got to play with too much, so I bought a bunch of seed this year, and it is very fun. If you're watching on YouTube, you can see how thick and lush it is. I want my entire lawn to look like this. It's so fun and pretty. More on teff soon. I want to see where this relationship goes before I talk about it too much. I don't want to jinx it. Anyway, it's Friday, which means Feedback Friday, where we explore what you all were saying about this week's topics. On Monday, I managed to keep the fireworks discussion going, for better or worse. At Forging Your Roots wrote, quote, "Agree with Jesse on this one. Taking care of your air, soil, flora, and fauna is taking care of your country, and that's without looking into where most fireworks are even produced, which also doesn't help. Thanks for spreading a good message. We don't need to lock into one mindset of what qualifies as proper celebration," end quote. And several commenters expressed the same sentiment, that we maybe need to rethink this specific tradition that is so environmentally disturbing. But also, to be fair, there is no shortage of pushback. At Anthony SNY wrote, quote, "I don't think fireworks are the enemy," smiling face emoji. "There are plenty of environmental arguments to plant your flag in, but fireworks isn't one of them and was probably a poor choice," laughing hysterically emoji. End quote. Yeah, I agree. There are plenty of arguments to plant your flags in, and I will certainly plant my flag in many of them. There seems to be this impression among the dissent that fireworks is the only environmental thing I've rallied against somehow. Just a soccer podcast that talks about gardening and hates fireworks. Totally what this is, except that fireworks are just one of many ecological disturbing things I've discussed. One that, even when used a couple times a year, not only has long-term implications for migratory animals, but also all other myriad of things I've mentioned. Contamination of water, air, effects on combat vets, etc. Don't worry, I still have lots of flags that need planting, but I'm gonna guess that people aren't done defending fireworks. We'll see you later today, I guess, and twice every year when I bring it up. On Tuesday, I told the story of how I got into making videos, and I liked this from at Suma Woob, who wrote, quote, "I like this podcast, but I miss your weekly videos where you were out in the field showing us how to do stuff. I especially like the ones where you show us other farms and interview the farmers. Appreciate all the work you put into those and this podcast also," end quote. And thank you. But yeah, as I talked about that day, those weekly videos unfortunately stopped paying for themselves, which, to be fair, was not the point, to make like a bunch of money on them. Our goal has always been to find a sustainable way to get information out there for free, but it just got to the point that we could no longer afford to just do a single video at a loss, like we couldn't pay our bills. Sadly, it's the same with farm visits. Those trips can cost thousands and thousands of dollars. And when YouTube was booming, we could justify it because they would make most of their money back. Later, we just literally couldn't afford it. In fact, that's a big part of why we finally moved to nonprofit status officially. We could supplement hat and book sales and YouTube revenue with more donations, and we could still do everything we used to do and this show. So that Patreon and donations are important to getting us back to that one day. Just throwing that out there. It will just have to grow by a fair amount, but yeah. At Torrance Carmichael asked, quote, "Why don't you pivot to more short form as part of your media strategy? I know why I wouldn't personally, but I'm wondering if you're saying that even with TikTok/short form, you still can't earn enough from native ad revenue for it still to make sense," end quote. Yeah, and that's a good question. Basically, yes, that's correct. But there are a few main reasons, I guess. And one, in order to make money on those platforms, your videos have to go pretty viral, which is not, terminating cover crop specialty, unless, of course, you danced on the cover crops. That actually could work. Two, they require a different skill set and video style that we could do, but we don't necessarily really enjoy that or really want to. And three, I'm not sure how I feel about short form in general. It devours a lot of people's time and attention. It's made to be addictive, and I'm not sure I feel great about contributing to that. YouTube isn't perfect, but it doesn't quite have that same attention stealing effect that just occupies people for hours and hours and hours. Also, I liked this comment about the $400 melons from at Mika. Aya108, who wrote, quote, "The wildly expensive melon phenomenon has a lot to do with Japanese culture. Their fruit is not generally eaten as a daily snack. Often people will make an event of sharing a single piece of gorgeous fruit. Also, gifts are an incredibly important part of the culture, and fruit is often gifted. Gifts are expected in various situations too. A gift like this melon would express many things at one time. The level of reciprocation you want to achieve if someone has done something big for you or given you a lavish gift, and also your own wealth and understanding of true quality. Quality and freshness in food is very important for Japanese people, even for items you buy weekly at the grocery store. I really miss the food culture there," end quote. Yeah, that's kind of beautiful. I love that. I wish we kind of had a similar food culture here. On Wednesday, we had Dr. Patrick Fries on to talk about the Haney soil test, and lots of complimentary comments on that show. Dr. Fries was awesome, and you all loved that. A few people have pointed out the sound disparity on the interview shows that we do, and we appreciate that feedback. The challenge for us honestly, for almost every podcast, is that I'm using this nice SM7B microphone that you can hear and see right now, and most people are using their cell phones or computer mics on their end, which the mics on those are just not as good. It's just the nature of the interview style podcast done over the internet, but we'll try to work on the sound as best we can. Thanks again for the feedback, as always. It's your show as much as it is our show, so always happy to hear how we can make it better. Then on Thursday, we talked about bokashi composting and washing crops and a few other things. I'm not sure what sparked this particular comment, but at John Jude, DP6ED, asked, quote, "Do gourds benefit the soil? Thanks. I just think about how well they shade the soil," end quote. And yes, they certainly can. I love gourds and would happily grow more of them if I had the space for things like birdhouses and containers, etc. They have a long history with Indigenous Americans and Three Sisters / Milpa style gardens. Great for shading the soil, as you mentioned, and loads of uses beyond just decoration. So yeah, totally. And then at Muddy Puddles Farm wrote, quote, "I'm enjoying seeing all the viewers' farms and gardens. It would be great to make it a permanent feature," end quote. And Mike and I agree. We talked yesterday about that and decided, yeah, let's try and make it a permanent thing, or at least more of a thing. So you all can send us your 20-second clips telling us where you are and how your season is going to farmermike@notillgrowers.com. Again, 20 seconds, just where you are and how the season is going. You can show a little bit of your garden. People love that. And it's been really fun for us. So thank you all, as always, for being awesome. You rock. Anyway, we're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, perennials in the annual beds, BRB. Today's episode is brought to you by Farmhand. If you're listening to this, you probably found 5 rare minutes to breathe. But what got pushed back further down the to-do list to make that happen? If it's your CSA newsletter, you're not alone. Farmhand's new newsletter builder was made for busy farmers. It automates weekly emails, drives add-on sales, and makes it easy to keep your customers in the loop without spending hours behind a screen. It launches this summer, but our listeners can request early access now. Visit farmhand.partners/no-till. That's farmhand.partners/no-till. All right, back to the show. If you, the listener, are enjoying this podcast, getting even a small amount of value from it, consider supporting our work over at patreon.com/no-till-growers. I will try to get to questions from everywhere that questions come in, but I will always get to your Patreon questions. Now, today's Patreon question comes to us from Patreon member Jesse Turretts, who writes, quote, "Curious if there's a way to integrate herbaceous perennials like comfrey, yarrow, dahlia, feverfew, lilies, hyacinth, etc. into annual beds. Is there a simple way to do this? Can I plant something like lettuce or radish on top or very close to plants like this before they emerge? Or is the nutrient demand or timing too much? Thanks as always, Jesse," end quote. All right. Thanks, Jesse. This is a fun question. So in general, on a market gardening scale, even like the most ecological farms I know are not going to plant perennials amongst their annual beds because it's just simply not super practical. Let me give you an example. Let's say I have a 100-foot bed with 3 perennial flowering plants spaced evenly apart down the bed. Each of those plants would prevent me from, for instance, easily being able to mow the bed or crimp a cover crop or tarp or whatever it may be. Now, certainly in a situation where you don't have those things, like a smaller scale garden or home garden, then there is no reason not to necessarily, including nutrients. Sure, some deep rooted crops like tomatoes may run into some issues, and depending on the perennial crop you plant there, the competition and possibly antagonism might be greater. But so long as the fertility is well maintained and spacing is adequate, I don't see a ton of issues necessarily with it. Specific issues might just be competition for water, sunlight, and maybe perennial plants, dropping leaves into your salad mix, for instance, that sort of stuff. One way, in fact, I could see this playing out on scale is with growers who are transitioning a plot to become a perennial plot. So for instance, maybe you are wanting to install an orchard and you are spacing those trees at 12 to 16 feet apart or whatever. Then you have the space between the trees that is just going to be unused for several years. So perhaps you plan to plant those beds with annual crops for a season or three, despite the annoyance of working around your trees. Then, of course, space between the rows is always fair game. I could also see someone using perennials to break up plots like I don't know, hedgerows or bookends, especially for people who are using like a tilter, for instance. So not much in the way of equipment would be needed and wouldn't be hard to get around those plants. Now, I've never grown it, but my understanding is that some things that you listed there, like maybe feverfew, can spread a bit. So that is probably not going to be the perennial I would go with. I would maybe go with something easier to tame, like maybe blueberries or something, and that does not self-seed quite as readily or spread rapidly via the roots. Naturally, if you're on a small scale and you're able to keep up with any volunteers that come up and you're cultivating that space all on your own, then I see no reason to not plant perennials thoughtfully around your annual beds. Just be mindful of how they propagate themselves and how much light and water they are going to demand and any potential antagonisms they might bring to other crops like comfrey, who very much has a none shall pass vibe to it. Anyway, was that helpful? Let me know. Otherwise, we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, should the customer dictate everything you grow? Be right back.
Hello, no-till growers. This is Mears Market Garden, located in Brownsburg, Indiana. We are doing our first farmers market this year. Doing pretty good thus far. Just looking for some other outlets to bring all this produce to. Thank you, Jesse, for everything you do.
All right, so I liked this comment that I got the other day on Tuesday's video that I thought it kind of sparked an interesting topic of conversation. It's from @DennisRyan7500, who wrote, quote, "The most important factor I have learned in market gardening is you must grow what our customers want. We sell very little lettuce, but a lot of watermelons, cantaloupes, tomatoes, green beans, and sweet corn," end quote. All right, so thanks for this comment here. I love it because it is both absolutely factual and, unfortunately, to some extent, not factual. So here's what I mean. Customers would love for you to just basically grow watermelons, cantaloupe, tomatoes, green beans, and sweet corn. But also, if you were to ask me to put together a list of the hardest crops to make a living growing, it would probably be those. Those are all long season crops, save for the beans, that have high risk of failure, high labor inputs, beans definitely not excluded from those, and they demand low relative prices. Indeed, tomatoes too. When you do the math, the profitability of, say, fresh heirloom tomatoes is challenging when you factor in labor and lost crops and disease and all those things. Now, if you're in a market that can charge $8 a pound for something like tomatoes, then maybe that calculus is different. But for most of us, it can be tough to actually make a good profit on tomatoes. I mentioned that day that I would have to charge at least $75 per melon for it to be comparable to what I earn on lettuce, and that's true. But it's true because, one, I can get 2 crops of lettuce in that same time that it takes me to grow 1 crop of watermelons. And 2, I can get several pounds of lettuce in the same area. So unless I can charge $10 or $20 per pound of watermelon, like I can charge for lettuce at a farmer's market, and our watermelons are often 7 to 11 pounds each, then it would be hard to justify growing watermelons. Not to mention the amount of space they take up in the cooler and the car, etc. Ditto sweet corn. I love sweet corn dearly, but I would need to charge $10 per ear or something to earn a reasonable income on it. And even then it would be iffy. Beans, for their part, just take an enormous amount of labor to pick, and people want to pay less than like $2 a pound for them when they are really worth like $10 or more a pound when you factor in the labor. So, and to be clear, I'm not judging our commenter here because they are correct that these are high demand crops, but just about the only way to make money on these crops is to have inherited one's land and or equipment so that your overhead is low and you have lots of space, to pay very, very, very low labor to cultivate and pick the crops, and or to not actually look at one's books to pay oneself for their own labor. And I don't want this to come off as a judgment. Farming is a tough business because people don't want to pay what food actually costs often. Forcing farmers to find ways of meeting the demand that ultimately sacrifice their own livelihoods or require very, very low paid labor. Effectively, people want melons, but in a world where we charge what the melons actually cost, people just honestly won't buy them. To the lettuce point, the way to make money on it is to grow it out of season. Maybe you're in an area that it can grow all summer. If your lettuce doesn't sell, in other words, it may just be because everyone else is selling it. However, to grow it out of season means more costs, so you have to charge what it costs to grow it. Because so few people grow it out of season, you can charge more. The challenge with the crops in that list, the sweet corn, etc., is that there really is only one season for those. So everyone grows them and then everyone has to charge nothing for them. Supply and demand and all that good stuff. Now, if you can figure out ways to efficiently produce those items ahead of the season and sell them closer to the price they cost, then you could truly make a good living doing it. It would take a fair amount of land and or skill, but you are right that the market is absolutely there for them. Sometimes, however, just because the market is there for it doesn't mean you can earn enough money to produce it. Because if you charge too much, customers can just get it for cheap at Walmart or a neighboring booth at a farmer's market. Farming is fun like that. All that said, that was also a list of some of my favorite crops. So we grow small amounts of them because we want to eat them ourselves. And as a farm business, we lose money because of it by sacrificing that space. But it's also okay to grow things you like because you like eating them. Or when done responsibly, having some of those crops for your special customers. Many of the farmers who grow those things often have to supplement with off-farm income or whatever. And you know what? If they enjoy doing it and are having fun and having their own watermelon to eat, totally fine with me. You have one life to live, grow some dang melons. Anyway, thanks as always for all of your thoughts and comments this week and every week. I hope everyone has a good rest of your harvest day if you're harvesting and market days this weekend if you're out marketing. Otherwise, peace out Friday. Don't forget No-Till Growers is now officially a 501c3 nonprofit, so donations are tax deductible and greatly appreciated. That's what makes any and all of this possible. You can go to our show notes of this show and learn how to chip in a little bit. Please make sure to like and subscribe and or follow wherever you're getting this podcast. That's an easy way to help us out. Enormous thank you to all of our show sponsors. And if you'd ever like to sponsor the show, you can reach out to Farmer Michelle at notillgrowers.com. Huge shouts to Willie Breeding for the theme music, Mike Hilbert for the production help and editing, and the team at No-Till Growers. Also, shouts to Epidemic Sound for the background music that you can hear.
Colors and contrast making it art.
Pick up a hat. We got new ones. Or a copy of my book, The Living Soil Handbook, at notillgrowers.com to support our work. Big thank you to everyone over at patreon.com/notillgrowers, where at a certain level, or if you just bump up from one level to another, or you sign up in the month of July, you get a shout out on the show. So big shout outs today to Cliff Palermo, Tony Onschutz. I feel like it needs like a German pronunciation. I don't think I have that, Tony, but Onschutz. Kez, and Andy Slimbarski. Andy Slimbarski is a fun one to say. And Patrick Weaver. All right, so as you will remember in our story, you heard yesterday that the rat dragon, as we called him, had jumped out of her cage, out of the window, and snagged a rat, then came back in, laid on the bed, and went to sleep. But the little boy and his mother were not the only ones to have seen this happen. A few moments after the little dragon fell asleep on the bed, in fact, a soft, squawky roar came from outside, and the little dragon shot up in bed. Little did the little boy and his mother know, or literally but anyone else in the world, but at the time the little dragon snagged the rat, a large dragon had been flying overhead, checking on the pond where she had laid her, for some reason, microscopic spawn, and seeing the young dragon burst out of the house and snag the same rat that she had had her eyes on. The little boy and his mother ran to the window and saw a large red rat dragon staring back at them. The little dragon once again leapt out of the window and ran up to its mother. The mother nodded at the little boy and his mom, and then the two dragons disappeared, like literally disappeared, cloaked from sight. That's kind of how dragons roll, I guess. And like that, the rat dragons were gone. But a couple times a year, while the boy is curled up in his bed, he gets awoken by that same, but smaller, squawky little roar. Come to say hello. And to see if they've got any rats. Anyway, thanks for watching and or listening. We will see you next week. We'll call it Monday. Awesome. Bye.
Courage to change the things